In this video, we're going to talk about the NFT Selector. So the NFT Selector was created so that users can search for participants in order to access their Nifty information. So only participants that have Nifty transition records added can be found here. So basically, Nifty Selector is where you go to search for your Nifty people. And if you can't find who you're looking for and you think maybe they have been added to the system, then you'll just go to statewide search, which we have a link to in the bottom right corner, and then you can search for them this way in this UI. That way, in case they are added to the system, you can find them and add a Nifty record through statewide search. So only Nifty records are going to show up in the Nifty Selector. If you don't have one, you're not going to show up. And if you're not a part of this agency, then you're also not going to show up. Because you can only search for Nifty people within your own agency. All right, so to access the Nifty Selector, you're going to need to have the NF Transition Selector permission. So if you don't see the Nifty Selector in the Compass Next navigation tree right over here, if that's not showing up underneath Navigator, then that just means you don't have the Nifty Selector permission, and you'll just have to request that permission from whoever manages the user accounts. Okay, so let's talk about what's in the Nifty Selector, and we'll just go through the columns left to right. To do this, I think I want to show you guys a little data so that you can see what it looks like when there's search results. So I did the search based on the default filters, which is the empty search by name, open filter by, which is going to show me all the open Nifty records, and then all for the assigned to, which is the transition navigator. So it's showing me everybody from my agency that is open. So I've got 3 people because I added them earlier today just for this demo. So let's go ahead and start. So participant name is the first column. You have the last name, first name, and middle initial if it's entered. Then second column is this CO stands for county code. So this is going to come from the most recent address record. If the county isn't selected in the most recent address record, then this will be blank. Medicaid ID. So Medicaid ID is entered in the participant record. So if it's not entered, it'll be blank. But if it is, shows whatever ID is entered there. Next column is Medicaid status. Medicaid status has a few options. It can either be active, pending, denied, or blank. So blank if it's not answered, and Medicaid status is in the notice and eligibility record in the state review section, so it's only editable by state users, so they fill out that. Interview date is the next column, so that is the date entered as the initial interview date when you're creating an NF transition record. So it's that first ETA date really. Then there's transition date. This is going to be blank until transition results records are added, or until a transition result record is added. So if one is never needed to be added, then this will always be blank. And then as soon as it is, a date will be displayed. It doesn't need to be sent to the state or anything to show up here. Whenever you add the record, it'll start showing. So that's the transition date. Then there's reevaluation due date, abbreviated to reeval due date. This is the date that the participant should be reassessed. This will be blank if a notice and eligibility record has not been marked complete by the state yet. But if you have one and it's denied, or you don't have one yet, then it's going to be blank. And the due date is calculated based on the notice and eligibility date plus 365 days. So it's going to be that linked, actually, CTA date that is the true notice and eligibility date, not the submit date. Then that is not going to be updated until another notice and eligibility is marked complete. Then it'll update again to a 365 days from that, because that'll be the most recent notice and eligibility. Then last one is close date. Close date will be blank until a close notice record is added. So as soon as one is added, though, the date is shown, which is kind of confusing because you're probably like, well, these are all the open people. Why is there a close date showing? Well, that's because the closed record for this must not be sent to the state. To be considered closed, this closed record needs to actually be submitted to the state. So this is probably showing up in open just because a closed record is added and has not been submitted. So don't be confused by that. So those are all the columns that you're going to see by default as an agent user, but there are actually 2 other columns that are hidden by default for agent users, but can be added by using this little hidden columns icon. So if you click on this, you can see that the interview plus 180 and transition minus 180 aren't checked to be visible. So to add them to the page, all you have to do is check these, and then now you can see those columns. You can also update your view for any of the columns if you want, and personalize it and remove things, whatever you want. So that's how that works. But so these other 2 columns that are by default hidden are hidden because their intention is mostly for state billing. So interview plus 180 represents the goal date that the participant should be transitioned to get full federal funding. The date displayed is 180 days after the initial interview date, and it's not updated after if a participant is reevaluated, because it needs to be from the the initial interview date to be counted. So that is not the reason we hide it, is because the state doesn't want you to think that that's a deadline in any way. Transitioning a participant should be completely person-centered and be on their own timeline, what makes sense for them. But they just requested this field so it would be a lot easier to know, like, oh, hey, okay, so if they transition by then will be covered fully for federal funding. And then this is kind of the yin and yang situation. Transition minus 180, that's the date that represents the earliest date transition services will still be paid for after you know when they actually transitioned. So this isn't going to be displayed until a transition results record is added, but then when one is, it's going to be 180 days before whatever the date of transition is. So that helps you know what literally is covered for federal funding, because now you know when they actually did transition. And they'll pay up to 180 days before that. So that's why this is kind of the opposite of it. It's like in the beginning of the process, oh, hey, if they transition within 180 days, all of this will be covered. So that's kind of how you can think about those 2 fields. And they're really for state when they're looking at billing and stuff, so in the funding. So you don't need to put them in your view, but if you want to use them for some reason, then go for it, and they're available through that little hidden columns feature. Next thing to know about the Nifty Selector is you can access the participant summary. So anywhere that the participant's name is listed in Compass Next, then there's going to be somewhere that you can access the participant summary. So if you double click on a row, or I'm sorry, on the name, that'll bring up the participant summary, which is nice because now you can easily go to different places within the case file of the participant, like to the participant record or the Nifty record, or you can go to statewide search easy from here. You've got the participant to-do list and some key information about the participant that is just nice to have at your fingertips. So that's something that you can access from the Nifty Selector. And then there's also the filters. So the first filter, the search by name, that's pretty straightforward. You type whatever you want. There's no character minimum. You can type just 1 letter and you'll still get results, but it does search only on last name. So if you try to search by first name, you're not going to get any results. So make sure you're searching based on last name. Then the next one is filter by. This has open, closed, and all. Open, like I said earlier, it's going to include everyone that is open, meaning they do not have a closed notice record that is sent to the state. And then closed is going to include everybody that has a closed record submitted to the state, meaning the Nifty record is closed. And then all is going to include all, so open and closed. Then in this next guy is the assigned to, which is really the transition navigator in this case. You have all Nifty, no TN, and then any all of the specific TNs that have been added to your agency. So There's only 2 in this list because I've only added 2 TNs to this agency, but if you had more, then more would show up. And then no TN is going to bring back Nifty transition records where the transition navigator is not selected yet in the living CTA in that general node. And then all is going to bring back everybody, so including no TN, including anybody that's selected, no matter who. So for instance, if I searched on John, I'm going to see, and I maybe change this to all, I'll see all of John's people. And if I switched it to Mary, now I can see all of Mary's people, but you're probably going to want to keep it on open because most likely you're only working with your open clients, which most of these were. So those are the filters. Something else to note about the filters is there's a couple combinations that we don't allow. This is just because the search would return too many results and it wouldn't be very useful. So those searches are if the assigned to is all, and this is the filter by is all, and then you leave the search by name empty. That's literally going to return every single person from your agency that's ever had a Nifty record. That's just too many. That's just too much for our system to load. So it'll give you this error that says, please narrow your search. That's too big of a search. And then the other time that it'll do that is if you have this as closed, because bringing back all of your closed people from all over time, that's going to be way too big of a list of results as well. So that'll also give you that search results, too many results. Please narrow your search. But you can look at all the open people in your agency because that shouldn't be a super crazy list. So that is permitted. But as long as you can use these filters otherwise in any other combination and way that you'd like, those are the only 2 ones that you can't do. And then lastly, there's sorts. So users have the option to sort every column by ascending or descending if you want. By default, the Nifty Selector will sort by participant name, ascending, and then interview date descending. So to just sort one column, though, if you want to change it, you just click anywhere within the column, and it'll start with ascending, and you click again, and it'll go descending. And then if you want to sort by multiple columns, you can hold the Shift button and then click in another, and then it'll number them as you go so you know what order they're in. And then if you click twice in the same column heading, it'll just change it from ascending to descending. So that's how the sorts work. And lastly, the thing that you're supposed to do when you go to the Nifty Selector is you're looking for someone. So you can select them, which I'm not sure why that wasn't working, sorry. I guess you have to click on the name. So you select them and then click the case file button, and that's how you go to their case file and actually, look at their Nifty record. Otherwise, you can actually, pull up the participant summary and go to the Nifty this way. You can really do whatever you want from here, but it's, again, only going to bring back clients that are in your agency that have NF transition records. And so that is the Nifty Selector. I'm going to go ahead and go somewhere just because I want to show you that they have a Nifty record. And voila, you're opened up in the Nifty.